Hey everyone, Tactics here, continuing my KSM walkthrough series, this time with the Spires of Ascension. As with my previous videos, I'll be going over the route that we used, as well as giving you guys tips and tricks to complete the dungeon in time. Like before, I will be playing it at 1.25 times speed, just for the sake of brevity, but if you want to check out this VOD for yourself, or you want the link to the Mythic Dungeon Tool route that we used, you can find those both linked in the description below. With that said, let's just get right into the run. Now this first pull, you have a couple options. As you see here, we have all of our players LOS at the beginning of the dungeon, and we can pull these back to avoid the Goliath pull. Also, something you could do is, instead of doing this, you actually all run up, and you pull it on top of the Goliath, and you Bloodlust and pop all your cooldowns there. Now what this does is, it adds the extra kick of the Goliath, but it does let you get both Lust on cooldown immediately, as well as you just get everything rolling and group everything up nicely. I personally, thinking back now, I think that is the play. I think that's better than this strategy, but if you're afraid of that Goliath, or you're lacking a bunch of kicks, because you have a lot of ranged members or boomkins, whatever it is, this is a decent way to go as well. Things to keep an eye on here. The Castigators have a Burden of Knowledge kick that needs to be kicked. It is a single target nuke and dot, this right there. So we assign kicks to that, and then the Forsworn Mender has the Doctrine that needs to get kicked as well. Aside from that, it's just the Vanguards have a Frontal Cleave that you need to watch out for, and Sweeping Blow right there. But that is really it for that pack. Now, of course, the Goliath added into that adds the extra kick from the Fist that he has. But do note, we have a Shaman in our group, and Shamans with their extra short cooldown kick can actually get every single one of these Goliath interrupts, as you'll see. So we have our Shaman assigned to that. If you don't have a Shaman, you'll have to assign 2 kicks to it. But this pull, we have the Shaman getting the Rebellious Fist, and that means all of our extra kicks can go into getting these Dark Lashes in the Castigator, which just deals random damage to a player, not necessarily the tank, just a random player. But still keeping an eye on both the Mender and the Burden of Knowledge kick from the Castigator, because those always need to get stopped. This pull is pretty much the same though. Again, I do now, looking back at it, think that pulling the Goliath with that previous pull, all of your party running forward, stacking it all up, lusting, and then dropping all your cooldowns, I think that is the better play. This what we did here is a little safer. But I think in terms of efficiency, pulling it all at the beginning, getting all your cooldowns and lust on CD immediately is a very good strat. Know that for things like Spiteful, you actually do kind of have to kill them before you can use these angels for some reason. Similar in Mists, the maze doesn't work with Spitefuls up, so it's a little annoying, but just keep note that. For this pull, we do lust... Oh no, this is for Tyrannical Week. So for Fortified Week, I'd say we do that Lust on pull 1. Tyrannical Week, I believe we actually save Lust for this boss. Even then, I think it's questionable. If you're doing that really, really big pull at the beginning, you could Lust there as well. We do CC this Mender though, just because again, there's a lot of kicks in this group with the Castigator and the Goliath, and also because of the weapon buffs it has. Now, we did accidentally quadruple bolster it here. I should have pulled these mobs down a little bit more. I wasn't quite out of the range. But it's not too bad because the Mender, they don't hit very hard. You see, that full quadruple bolstered Mender is not actually going to hit me very hard at all. Keeping the Doctrine interrupted. And so the weapon buff, see right there, we have the little weapon on the ground. That is from purging these Menders. So they will buff themselves with a little magical effect, and it can be purged off by shaman, hunters, all those things, and it'll throw that weapon onto the ground and you can pick it up. We would normally bring this Mender into the boss to continue getting these weapon buffs right here, but because it's bolstering, we can't do that. And that brings us to the first boss, where the main thing tanks you need to worry about is that overhead slash. So this is going to hit you very, very hard every time. It is physical damage, but you will want something up for it for every single one, especially on Tyrannical Weeks. Aside from that, notice the movement on this fight. It actually is a bit awkward how the boss moves with the beam between them. It is not uncommon, depending on how you move, to get clipped by that beam, and it puts a pretty nasty dot on the tank. It still hurts the tank even, yeah. So be careful. My recommendation is to not move in straight lines with it. It's you kind of move in a half circle to get to the lizard. And I would definitely recommend trying to stay with the companion the entire time. Have them stacked up like this as much as you can, just to maximize DPS, as they do share a health pool. Aside from that, not much else to talk about here. There's a magic debuff you can dispel that hits pretty hard on Tyrannical, as you're seeing if you look at the health bars. And then just these spears that you should want to try and bring out of the boss area like that. And then, of course, making sure you're dodging the barrages, because they do hurt a lot. But yeah, fairly straightforward fight. Honestly, not too bad on Tyrannical. I think the Slush was a mistake. I think this Slush should be moved to the beginning with that Goliath pack. You pull everything at the front with the Goliath, and you lust there even on Tyrannical week, just because this boss is just so... It's pretty trivial on Tyrannical. There's not much going on. Next, we go right first, just to get some extra percent. So we pull all the Stealth Claws. Pulling the Praetor here is another mistake. Looking at the percent now, don't do that. I'll explain it later on, but this kind of does mess with our percent a little bit. So just try and pull these Stealth Claws. And note that even on Fortified Week, they do really, really hurt. So you will need to do a fair amount of kiting. I have the 5 stack of the bleed right now. That's a bit scary. The stacking bleed, of course, not mitigated by armor or anything like that, just damage reductions. So this pack can get a bit spooky, but make use of things like Ursul's, Binding. I think we have AoE stun here as well. All those good things to help you kite. Yeah, this is just one of those packs tanks where you're going to be kiting a lot. That is the way it is. I'll finish them up, and then we'll finish off the Praetor afterwards. Yeah, but again, reminder, try not to pull that Praetor with this pack. Just pull the 6 Stealth Claws, and then make your way to the left-hand side. Now a note for this Ether Diver and Skirmisher pack, it's 90% of the time bugged with them up here, so they will snap down shortly after you pull, but they will be untargetable until they begin to cast. So notice nothing, evade, evade, evade. As soon as they cast, you can start damaging them. So definitely, DPSers, be careful if this is a bugged pull, because your tank won't be able to have much threat on them until they're actually targetable. So very often, as you saw even there, the DPS instantly got threat. So you just need to be careful, be prepared. And then you move into this Skirmisher pack. Now, they will spam hurl if there is no one in melee range of them. And notice how I line them up here to try and get them all pushed together. But if there is a tank in melee range of them, they will only hit the tank. Right? They won't do their hurl attack, which is quite lethal on Fortified Weeks. And so, as a tank, you definitely want to be always getting into the Skirmisher's face, making sure they're attacking you, and not doing random party damage. Things like Ursul's are also really good, because when they jump away, they'll get pushed right back. And aside from that, this pack in particular, you can kind of position them so they all jump in the same direction, which you saw I did there at the beginning. So you just need to be careful. Anytime you see a Skirmisher, basically, you need to make sure as a tank you're always getting in their face. Because anytime they're casting Hurl, is a chance that they're going to kill one of your party members. We move on into the Squad Leader and the Champion pack. Champions, just like Menders, they have the Doctrine you need to kick, and they have the weapon buff that you can purge and pick up. Again, the Skirmisher, you'll see I want to try and get in its face as soon as I can. And then you're going to have to focus the Squad Leader here. As you saw, he has a Frontal Cone, but he also has a damage reduction aura. So you're just going to have to kill him first, and especially on something like Bolstering, you're just going to have to live with the fact that the other mobs in this pack will get bolstered at fairly high health. Moving on, this is one of those platforms where you don't have to wait for this angel. You can actually move speed and jump fairly. Most classes in the game can actually get across it fairly easily. If you do it immediately, it'll save time. See, it's about the same if you did it late. And then that brings you to this big Ether Diver pack. So these guys are very scary. This was nerfed, so this, I believe the duration between these casts was tripled from 6 seconds to 18 seconds, so it's much, much safer now. But previously, this is very scary for tanks. You want to get as many kicks as possible. It puts a magic debuff on your tank that will need to get dispelled, and hits quite hard, especially again on Fortified Week. So you just want to make sure you're stunning, interrupting, anything you can to reduce those casts. This pull can also be a tad bit scary. Again, the tank has to constantly get in the skirmisher's face, so the melee need to be careful of this squad leader's frontal cone right there, because the tank has kind of got a position based on how the skirmisher positions. So there is going to be a decent amount of movement. And aside from that, that Infernal Strike you saw from the Inquisitor, that is the must-kick ability in this pack. Aside from that, though, nothing else is kickable but the Inquisitor, so extra kick can just go into that random Dark Lash damage. You'll see here I have to run up because of Necrotic, but I will get back in immediately to the Skirmisher to prevent those hurls from continuing. There is also the Kyrian Spear right here. Kyrian ability is pretty strong in both Necrotic Wake and Spires. It's not on the same level as like something like the Venthyr. I wouldn't say it's mandatory, but it is very, very helpful. So would recommend having a Kyrian in your group. Not mandatory, but if you can, it will make your life a little bit easier. And I will point out the pulls that we actually use the spear on later on. There's just a small little Stealth Claw pack leading into another Prideful. And not much to see there. Can skip that. Yep. Just dealing with the Prideful and moving on. So this is the Praetor pack. The Stealth Claws are always padding with the Praetor, so you can get them out of stealth with like a Flare or any AoE effect if you want. And it's very much the same, and you're just kind of watching your bleed stacks and kiting as soon as you need to reset them. Depending on the CC in your group, you might need more space in this, but we have Binding and Ursul, so I don't need too much space to reset stacks. And we're moving in. You're going to have to watch this pack because there is a pat here, so depending on where that pat is, you might have to delay this pull slightly. We luckily did not have to. We're in a good spot. And again, our Shaman is getting all of the Goliath kicks while everyone else is just kicking the Ether Divers. And as you see, I'm moving back just because I am a little bit scared of this pat coming in. We definitely don't want that to happen. And just resetting my Necrotic stacks before going back in. Now this next pull is another squad leader pull. So again, you're going to have to focus that down. And with him is another champion that has the kick and the purge. And then the Inquisitor, which has the Infernal Strike that must be kicked, as well as Dark Lashes, which are just extra kicks can be dumped into that. Now, one recommendation is you definitely don't want to be using cooldowns here. It is the next pack that you're going to fight is the Spooky pack. That is the Spooky pack. So you want to make sure you're saving your big cooldowns, like things we have Fire Ellie, our Wild Spirits is coming up, but he's not going to use it. He's going to hold it for that next pack. Things like PI, all those things. We are holding any cooldowns we have for that next pack. This pack, I believe it's a 5 pull. It has an Ether Diver, it has a Stealth Claw, it has a Squad Leader, and then it has a Praetor, and of course the Champion. So you need the kick and the purge on the Champion. Extra kicks can go into the Ether Diver, but again, you're going to have to nuke the Squad Leader. Now, because we pulled that Praetor earlier, this is actually going to kind of mess with us a little bit here, as you'll see. We do Spear here. Shortly into the pack, we basically use it as a tank defensive. As you'll see there, we'll use it kind of as a defensive cooldown, just prevent tank damage. But again, we killed the Squad Leader, and that summons the Pride because we killed that Praetor earlier. If you did not kill that Praetor earlier, you are free to kill that Squad Leader and then kill the remainder of the pack down together, and you'll be fine. That's when the Prideful will spawn. Because we pulled that Praetor, it spawns on the Squad Leader death, which is very, very bad. You see things get very scary. We have to commit a lot of defensive cooldowns here as well, which is not ideal, and I do end up dying anyways. Luckily, we are able to scrape by on this pull, but yeah, it gets much, much scarier because of that Praetor pull after the first boss. So again, when you're pulling that, only get the Stealth Claws, and that'll make your life easier here. You'll be able to kill the Squad Leader and the Ether Diver first, and then you can cleave down the other 3 adds there, and you'll be fine, and that's what will spawn the Prideful, unlike what happened then. We are now lusting on Ventunax. On Fortified weeks, I would lust that pack that we just did, the scary one. Tyrannical weeks, Ventunax is a little scary, but this strat does make it easier. So as you'll see, I'm putting these directly beside each other, these circles. People that get the Dark Stride debuff, they're going to be taking a ton of damage. Just look at how much damage this is doing right now, right? Absolutely trucking him. And after 2 have gone down, you see I'll move a quarter of the way around the room. And everyone is stacked on me. Look how few of the orbs come towards us, right? It's very, very easy to dodge these orbs here. They're all coming from one direction. They're easy to see, and they're easy to dodge. I then do the exact same thing here. Two of these points put directly beside each other, rotate a quarter of the room for the recharge, and it just makes life a lot easier. Even range need to come here every time the recharge happens. You want to be on the boss just because that is the best place to stand. If you're standing in the middle of the room, look how much you have to dodge compared to us, right? There's just a few balls that we need to dodge. Ignore that. That didn't happen. Don't worry about that. But yeah. You are able to jump up on this angel early as well while he's flying down the middle. Not really much of a time save, like 2 seconds maybe, but it's something you can do. And then we move on to the third boss platform. So the second spear you can grab is right over here. There's another angel down. I see a lot of people missing this spear. There is one right there. There he is. And now we go for the skip here. So this skip can actually be done without Shroud. I believe we actually get a little bug here. It's nice. So pretty much, you're able to do this without any kind of CC on this guy. You can come here and jump over this fire on either side. Either side works. And you're fine. You won't aggro this guy. And then you can hug. You can jump up here, go around, and then jump down over here. That also, no CCs needed. Won't aggro this stuff. The CC you'll need afterwards, as you'll see here, our Shroud kind of despawns on us. Not sure why. I'm really not sure what happens here, because it seems like a couple times we've done this dungeon, this has happened, and a couple times nothing has happened. At first we thought it was tied to the cast of the Goliath, but as you can see, I mean, he started casting after we were pulled out of stealth, so not 100% sure here. Ideally, don't want to pull this pack, but if Shroud's not working, you can just do the skip I talked about, where you just jump over here, come up, go all the way around, and then jump down, and you won't have to worry about this pack at all. We end up killing this and skipping a couple other things later on, which is fine, but ideally you don't pull this pack because the Hellions are a bit spooky. You end up having to kill it. Wardens, they have a greater mending, and they also have a weapon buff. Just make sure it's kicked, and then the weapon buff is purged, and you can pick it up. Nice weapon buff. It's different than the original one. I believe this one does some healing, but still a solid buff. Now for this skip, you will need some sort of CC, namely Sap, Imprison, or Mind Soothe. Those all work on this guy without putting you in combat because of the aggro radius reduction. Paralyze plus Ring of Peace also works. And of course, Polymorph and Freezing Trap do work if your Hunter / Mage goes first and then drops aggro afterwards. So that's the only way they work. Other than that, no other CC will work on this skip. So if you need one of those, otherwise you'll need to Invis Pot. So we snap it and we jump up this ledge here. Now normally we would pull both of these packs not together. So it would be this 4-pack first, which has 2 Justicars and 2, I believe they're Wardens. Yeah, 2 Wardens, which means there's 4 important kicks in this pack. So we would pop cooldowns here, and we would assign 1 person to each mob, and that would be their kick. So for the Justicars, I believe I don't think it's Burden of Knowledge or Infernal Strike, but it's something similar to that. They spam Dark Lash and they have the 1 big spell. You want to assign 1 person to kick the big spells. Then the Wardens have the Greater Mending, and you want to assign 1 person to each of those, and then pop cooldowns and nuke them down before they get too many kicks. Because we had that extra pull, we're going to just skip around. And we're actually also going to skip these circles, which we would normally pull. And what we're doing here is we're double CCing them. You don't need a threat radius reduction one this time, because you normally would pull this pack anyways. But because, again, we have the extra percent, we're already at 91.5. We do not need anything else. So what we're doing here is we're doing the aggro radius reduction, but any CC works here normally. Because you're going to be pulling this pack. And what you do is basically you CC them, you hug this right wall, you run around, you get your whole party behind this pillar here, and then you would pull them and LOS them here, and they would all group up and die very, very quickly. And we're now pulling the boss. So what you want to do here for Oryphrion is we have everyone stacked up but the tank. The tank is alone because of this charge stomp. This will cleave if there's someone else near the tank. So for the entire fight, pretty much, you want to keep everyone away from your tank. So it happens right after this first ordnance. But we do want the ordnance orbs to be stacked. And that makes the intermission phase easier. Notice that we're also going to be saving our offensive cooldowns. We're not going to pop them here because the boss takes extra damage in that intermission phase. So you do want to kind of save your burst for then. Dropping this ordnance together again. Watching that stomp, and the boss shuts down. On Tyrannical week, it's a bit scary to soak all these orbs as the tank, so I pull half and then we immunity the second half. But on Fortified week, I can pretty easily soak all 10 orbs and pop a defensive and be fine. So that's what we do for this boss. From there, it's just rinse and repeat. Depending on how far you went, you can keep going down this way, or you can turn around and go back. We just kept going. If you had a third phase, you could then turn around and pat backwards. Either way, doesn't matter too much. Just make sure you're getting that Purifying Blast out. As you see there, it deals a ton of damage on Tyrannical. So we did have a death there, but not too big a deal. But yeah, this boss just kind of repeats from here. So we'll fast forward a little bit. Now, because of that Praetor, again, we don't do another pull here. Let me just fast forward till you see it. Okay, so this is another set of usurpers, and again, we have the pillar here. So what you can do if you didn't pull that Praetor is you have the option to pull this pack to change your prideful spawn. So if you pull this pack, right, you would LOS it. Again, they would just all run to you. They would melt down because they're non-elites. And that makes it so that you get a prideful after the second mini-boss, which means you have it for the third mini-boss. Now, normally you'd say, well, why would I need it for the third mini-boss? That third mini-boss, especially on fortified keys, but even on Tyrannical, is very, very scary. All three abilities, tons of damage going out. You want to kill it just as soon as possible. And personally, I always prefer having the prideful for that third mini-boss. Again, we have the high percent because of that butt pull and the Praetor pull earlier on. But if you didn't do that, like you should, then you would be able to pull this here to get up to enough percent to get a good prideful spawn. Also, our lust timings are a bit off here. We're going fairly quickly because it's Tyrannical week instead of Fortified week. Normally, you would have Bloodlust at around this time, especially on a Fortified week. 100% of the time, you would have Bloodlust for this. Just because you would be Bloodlusting before that second boss on that big scary pack. And so what we do here is we double pull anyways. Always the middle and the left guy. You never want to do Klodos. Klodos puts the ramping dot on people, and that is just not good. Bad news. Don't pull that. Pull him last every time. So here, we're double pulling, and we normally have Lust. We don't, that's okay. You need to watch Lachesis, who has the frontal cone, and then the ramping damage taken increase, and Astronos, who has the spears. Now, for the spears, there is actually a way to tell where the beams are coming out of the spear. So let's see, and I'll show you guys. Where is it? Come on, spear. There it is. Okay. Okay. So, based on the way the spear is leaning, you can tell which way the beams are going to be shot. So here, it's leaning this way, so you know the beam is going to come out that way, and then of course, it's always going to come out evenly spaced, so this way, and this way. Right, so there it is. Always evenly spaced, this way, this way, this way, this way, based on where it's leaning, because it's leaning this way, you can always see where the beams are going to be coming from. Now, the other thing for this pack is they have to die at the same time, otherwise the one that's alive is going to get full healed. So you have like 1.5–2% breathing room, so you need to make sure they die together. Yeah, because you have like 2 seconds basically. When he got buffed there, that would full heal the living one if it was still alive. So you need to make sure they die together. Also know that these spears are still real until that happens, until that little healing happens. So if the spears are still up after this Prideful, be careful. They normally get one more wave before they're gone. But yeah, be careful for those spears. They do a ton of damage, especially with the ramped up damage taken increase. Watch yourself. Pretty much later on in that fight, one hit from those spears is a death. Now again, I mentioned this guy is very, very scary. So we commit our spear here, and we have Lust. We're not going to use it. Normally we wouldn't have Lust. We would have lusted the double pack. We are committing the spear and cooldowns here just to get him down ASAP. It doesn't look scary here because of how much we committed, but trust me, this is not something you want to play around with. The longer this guy stays alive, the spookier it gets. And from there, we're just moving on to the final boss in Devos. This boss, fairly straightforward. As you see, our healer is jumping off the edge immediately. Anytime the phase begins, you can do this. Jumps up, grabs a spear, and throws it at the boss. Deals a few % worth of damage. I think it's like 100k. I believe it scales with key level. Not 100% sure on that, but it deals a lot of damage. So if you can, that's a nice little DPS boost. Not mandatory, just a little. Wouldn't even say cheesy, just a little extra thing you can do. Aside from that, this boss is just full of one-shot mechanics that you just have to do correctly, right? Missile detonation, be in the blue circle, run through, don't be in the line, and you'll be okay. And just kind of repeat that for a long time. It's like 3 minutes or something. This is a long boss fight, even on fortified weeks. Nope, you can have the extra DPS here while she's channeling. Do a little bit extra. Want to collect those orbs. One thing I can't stress enough in this phase is to not rush the spear throw. You can watch the boss moving. I always do the spear throw. I'm going to wait until she moves and then right in the center of her body. You never need to rush this phase. The worst thing that can happen is you miss the spear. That literally doubles the length of that intermission phase. Makes everything hurt a whole lot more. So definitely do not recommend doing that. Just take your time with the spear. That's one of the only things that can wipe you. And just be careful. But yeah, this fight again, just kind of a rinse and repeat, similar to Oryphrion, where it's just the same thing repeated several times. Not much going on there. That's pretty much it for this video, guys. As always, if you enjoyed it, please make sure to like and subscribe. If you have any questions whatsoever on Spires, Guardian Druids, tanking in general, anything at all, feel free to leave a comment below, or you can drop by and ask me on my Twitch stream, and I will do my best to answer. Otherwise, thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.